Hello. What am I talking about today? Survival guide for a terminally ill dragon. Or if you're a really big fan of Google Translate, how to survive as a dragon with time limit. Not with a time limit, with time limit. Um, if you're a big Google Translate guy, there you go. What's the gist of the story? Well, it's an isekai, of course. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna give you a little rating off the bat here, but, it's an isekai, so keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, because I'm the isekai guy. I always do isekais all the time, isekais. Um, General rating off the bat, 7. Okay, let's get into this. So, general gist of the story. It's an isekai. This guy gets reincarnated. He, in his past life, had a terminal illness. Therefore, in this new life of his, he wants to live as long as possible, and it just so happens he gets reincarnated into a webtoon that he happened to read in his past life. But he's reincarnated as someone that's fated to die. Oh no. So he has to kind of figure out his life situation and, try to survive. You wouldn't guess this, but the main idea of the story is a survival guide. Yeah, so he's trying to survive. Whoa, whoop-de-doo. When he first shows up, he's in his little cute dragonoid form, and it kind of gives you this idea that, the story is going to be a bit more comedic, and like cutesy. A lot of the, art style is very, I don't know, it's very like cutesy and just like, okay. If you like that, you like that. I mean, I think it is cute, but I don't know if I necessarily, think that's my top of, the top of my type of stories, but hey, whatever. So what's the general gist? Well, he gets reincarnated, starts searching for, ways to keep himself alive. His life is like, they have a lot of time skips, so he already lives like hundreds of years. Basically like 20 chapters into the story, so I mean, he's already well exceeded that of a, human lifespan. So I'm not really sure why he's like, super concerned about this whole deal. I feel like he could have just lived his life to the fullest in that period of time and been content. But hey, whatever, I'd probably do the same in his position. I'd want to, make it. That's fine. He has like a super caring dad that basically does, anything to make his son over here happy. I mean, there's a point where he literally like stays awake for, I don't even know what it is. It's like 100 years or something. Like he stays awake for like 100 years just protecting his son because yes, natural disasters that constantly occur to kill this character. They want to wipe him out. Because the original story, requires his death in order to, happen. Hence, the story itself is trying to kill him. You might ask, like, oh, well, why do they care so much about this guy's death? Well, I mean, his father is, a big bad dragon. Woo! So and the impetus for why his father goes on a rampage is because his, like, poor old son dies. So it's, it's kind of like his death is the initiator of the actual story itself. Which, I think is kind of a fun idea. I like the idea. It's like, trying to stay alive in order to, stop the original story, keep his father happy, alive, healthy, whatever. I think it's like, it's a pretty fun idea. I like it. It's also kind of sweet seeing like a father that, cares for his kid. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that's kind of sweet. Also, there's not like any like restrictions on the main character. Of course, the world is trying to kill him, but he can do whatever he can, to stop it, like within that world. So, he trains up, and of course, he's overpowered because, duh. So yeah. Now on the point of being overpowered, there's combat in the series, and I don't necessarily like it that much because it does the whole webtoon thing where it's like spewing particles and, covering up like the entire screen basically with particles just to, get things by, which I can't say I'm a huge fan of, but hey, whatever, you do what you have to do. I personally don't like it. I think it's kind of obnoxious and distracting. Even with like swords, you know, you see like lightning coming off the swords and going in like every direction every time they fight, because there just has to be particle effects all over the screen every time there's any sort of fight. Which, you know, I personally don't like, but hey, whatever, that's fine. I think other than that, the art's pretty good. I mean, it's like, you know, similar quality to that of this, you know, cover art. It's pretty good art. Design-wise, I mean, yeah, it's alright. The dragons, you know, they're not super interesting or anything. That's why I literally used like a Clash of Clans dragon, because they're just like, eh? They don't. I think like they're all kind of like comedic and like a little bit silly looking, but they're, you know, their cartoony style isn't necessarily unique. I mean, if you've seen a cartoon dragon, boom, there you go. So yeah, I mean, even though his father's a big scary dragon, it's like, okay, who cares? Also the main character, I mean, there's OP, but then there's like this main character OP. He just has everything. It's like, do you want to give like an OP power to this character? Okay, like how many? All. That's basically what the author said. He's just like, yeah, just every OP power, all of them. I don't care. So the main character has, you know, has the 4 elements. The fire, earth, wind, water. It's the there's actually more elements in the series. There's like dark and stuff, but yeah, he has like everything, because you need him to just be OP for reasons. I don't know. It's just, you know, it's more of like a gag series. He, you know, travels around the world and just does like little things, and, you know, meets like, oh, here's a random character here, or here's a random character there, and just kind of interacts with them. Like, there's some like tidbits of intrigue in terms of like storytelling and history. Like, there's a part where we see like, you know, dwarves or whatever showing up, and they're just kind of like, you know, punching people to death and all that shit. And then one of them is like a huge dwarf. He's like, you know, like super tall for a dwarf, and the whole reason is like, oh, there's like this mystical tree that lets you grow. And for some reason the main character, even though they're like an adolescent, is just like, I need to be taller. It's just like some weird plot point for like 10 chapters about this main character needing to be taller. It's like, I mean, okay. Also, power scaling wise, like, I know I mentioned like the fights are weird, but there's also just like strange power scaling where like the main character gets like one of like the highest tiers in one of these elements or like ability types, right? And the whole thing is like, okay, there's a certain number of elements, right? And most people have one element, okay? But the main character has multiple. So in my head, if you're like like almost max for an ability type already, right? And he's like not even that old, and he has other elements, and he's like pretty high up in those as well. Wouldn't he already be like one of the top tiers in that verse? I don't know, it just seems a little weird to me scaling wise. And then like they kind of just have to throw like the toughest enemies just to get rid of them, and it's like, where do you go from there? Like, I don't really know where, like, where do you go from that? If you're already like bringing the top tiers in the verse, it's like, what's the point? I don't know. Seems a little silly to me. Also, the idea that like they're trying to axe off this character like so early, because the plot doesn't start for like 100 or 200, 300, 400 years. I don't know. It's well into the future. So like, if they killed him now, wouldn't that just what does that do? Wouldn't that just mess up the entire plot anyway? I don't really see the idea there. I think it's like a fun idea, like, oh, the world is, you know, the world is trying to kill this guy or whatever. That's cool. I get it, but I don't really see how that would fix things. But yeah, I don't know. It's still fun. Like, it's just like silly, like going through the motions, kind of like a, here's a random thing you could see, here's a random fight, here's a random like funny moment because he's, you know, extremely overpowered among like weak, you know, humans and all that. Okay, you know, it's fun. These characters, really the only characters that I think are that noteworthy is there's like a little, you know, fairy that like shows up and just helps like this character out, like the main character. They're just like an ally to him. but they're not like, they don't really have much of a personality other than just, I'm going to help you with like anything you want. Um, and then there's like, you know, these two, which are basically just nothing burgers, you know. They're just like the, oh, we do wacky things. And then, you know, the father, who is just like, good dad, and that's it. That his personality is, I am a good dad. Um, there's like, you know, there's some other characters that show up here, you know, here and there periodically. Like I said, you know, there's a really tall dwarf that, you know, parties with them for a little bit. Of course, you know, the main character is there. He's really, his personality is just, I want to get more power, I'm greedy, and I don't want to die. Those are like the three things you need to know, and that's him. There's not really a lot of nuance there. It's just, you know, those three elements, and there you go. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's okay. It's just following the main character as he gains more power, finds new ruins, you know, meets characters from the original webtoon, or at least, you know, relatives of those characters, and tries to, like, mess up, you know, this timeline that's set in the story. Like, you know, if he gets rid of, like, an ancestor here, that could cause problems here, so he's kind of, like, you know, doing that periodically, which, yeah, that's fun. But overall, I mean, I wouldn't say it's any sort of, like, deep story or anything. It's just, like, you know, silly fun, go around the world, gaining power and stuff. I guess I'll give you the old SAE. So, if you don't know what this is, it's story, art, and enjoyment. Story-wise, you know, I think it's kind of fun, at least, right? I think it's pretty fun for an isekai. I like the idea of him, like, you know, trying to, you know, stop the world from killing him and things like that. Like, that's kind of fun. But I wouldn't really say it's anything deep. So I mean, you could probably go with like a 7, maybe an 8. The art's pretty good, and I would say it's like slightly above average, but I don't really like the whole like particle effects everywhere. And it happens a lot. So I'm gonna go with 7 just because of that. It kind of annoys me. And I think for like enjoyment, just yeah, 7. It's fine. It's fun, but like I'm not anything deep. So overall, I think 7's fair. I think it's a, you know, a pretty fair objective, both my objective and, you know, enjoyment and personal rating would be a 7. I think it's fine. It gets the job done. It's a fun little story to read on the side. And, you know, it does everything optimally. Like, most things are done well. So I'd give it a 7. Yeah, I mean, I think that's about it in terms of the story. I'd appreciate it if you could like, comment, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Maybe leave another story that you want me to talk about down below. You know, even if I've already read it, I'll read it again. I don't care. Yeah. I'll see you.